Welcome to First Things First. It is Wednesday morning here in New York City. We got a lot to get to today. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris. This is Nick Wright. You look like you have something to say. Do you have something to say?
No, one of the camera guys is messing with me and everything. I'm getting ready to throw something.
I'm happy. It's time that our wonderful camera crew stops taking this abuse from Cris Carter.
Yeah, Mr. Tickles, too. I'm going to get handsy with him today.
Absolutely.
Let's go.
There we go.
It's football season.
Show.
It's a full contact.
You always want to start a show with, I'm going to get handsy with Mr. Tickles.
Yep.
That is his nickname. We got a lot to get to today. Andrew Luck's Week 1 status is now up in the air. We'll tell you why. The Giants are hoping rookie Daniel Jones doesn't see the field at all this season.
You say Daniel Boone?
There you go. And Mr. Big Chest made his big return to the Raiders. After missing more than a week of practice with his frostbitten feet, and because he didn't like his helmet, Antonio Brown officially returned to Raiders training camp yesterday. And yet another bizarre chapter in this saga. AB is now taking to Twitter to find a helmet that fits the NFL guidelines because, of course, that's the best way to do this. Head coach Jon Gruden expects AB to be ready Week 1 despite all of these issues, and so does Antonio Brown.
Well, I'm extremely grateful to be here. We're dealing with a lot of adversity. It's on up and up on things, so I'm excited to be back and see my teammates and get in the groove of things here shortly.
We know where he's been. We know what he's been through. We're thrilled to have him back, and obviously we think he's a great player, and we're anxious to get the men together and get rolling.
I'm battling with a foot injury. You know, I see my face all over the news, all the talk, but these guys have been doing a good job with supporting me. It's grateful to hear them come out about it, and I'm excited to hear to just do my job.
Okay, the reason his face is all over the news is because he put his face all over the news. And the reason he's dealing with all this adversity is because it was 99% of it was all created by him and the decisions he made. But let's talk about how this affects life on the field, life off the field with Antonio Brown. Will his production on the field make up for the drama that he seems to create wherever he goes now here in Oakland?
If you go through NFL history, it would tell you, yes. The NFL, they will tolerate a lot of things. If you look, say, Nick, in your viewing lifetime, watching the NFL, I think two of your favorite receivers, one Randy Moss, one A&B Terrell Owens. All right?
So, well, Randy's certainly one of my favorites. T.O., one of the ones I have so much respect for on the field.
Yeah, and the thing about it is there's a reason why those guys played for 10 different teams. It's because they had unbelievable ability. But after a while, through a number of different reasons, sometimes money, but other reasons, they wore out their welcome. And that's what will happen. Oakland will be able to tolerate it for a long time. I mean, long enough. And that's, see how Derek Carr develops. Moving to Las Vegas, they need a face. They need a marquee. They need someone besides Gruden. I'm watching Hard Knocks, and if they tell me Gruden is the only thing I'm going to see, not going to be a lot of viewing on that. They don't have a lot of good storylines. And after you listen to Gruden, you kind of get on to his little stick as far as what he's doing and everything. So, no, it's the NFL. It's been this way for a long time. Absolutely. Productivity is the number one thing over anything. Yes, if you can play regardless, committing a crime or anything, distraction in the locker room, they are willing to tolerate it, but for so long.
And I think some people would say, well, the Steelers weren't willing to tolerate it anymore. But they were.
For a while.
Well, and they even were into this offseason. The owner met with AB on AB's terms.
Trying to work it out. Yes.
What the Steelers weren't willing to do was deal with it and give him a raise to boot. They weren't willing to deal with it and break their own contract rules they have within the organization about guaranteed money, ripping up a deal that early. So he didn't even wear out his welcome in Pittsburgh. No one can question how productive Antonio Brown has been. And we haven't yet seen him play dealing with the foot injury and with the new quarterback. So we would be lying if we pretended we knew, oh, well, he's not going to be the same receiver. He might be. I think his production's going to take a haircut because the quarterback play is so important, because I think the Steelers were such a better team in a lot of areas that helped Antonio Brown. But I have to be open to the possibility he's going to do another 1,500-yard, 110-catch season. That's absolutely on the board. I still don't know even if he does that, if that will, though, be worth it for the Oakland Raiders, because the objective for Oakland is not just about this year. The objective is setting a new culture under Gruden, getting fans excited for Vegas, and developing young players. You don't trade an All-Pro and a Pro Bowl player for 3 first-round picks and some other stuff if you're not trying to develop a new young core of talent. So it's not just Tyrell Williams, who they gave $44 million to, a 27-year-old receiver. It's not just Hunter Renfrow. It's Cleveland Farrell, who was a top 5 pick. You don't think he looks to Antonio Brown as for an element of how you conduct yourself, how you should or shouldn't as an NFL superstar that he hopes to be one day? So for me, unless the Raiders shock everyone, go 11-5 this year, make a playoff run, it's going to be about more than just production.
Sure.
And will Antonio Brown give you enough value in that area? The Steelers only had to worry about the production because they were in a Super Bowl window. We'll deal with all the nonsense, whatever it is, because we think we can win a championship. The Raiders are not yet there.
I have to disagree with you. I don't think Jon Gruden wants to set the table with a new culture there in Oakland. None of the moves he made seem to point in that direction, where he wants to bring guys in that could help cultivate a winning culture and help some of the younger guys on the team. You don't bring in a Burfict or an Incognito and Antonio Brown.
Doesn't it depend on what culture you're trying to set? It might not be the culture that you think you should be trying to set.
But you can't also say, I want to set a culture, but I want these guys to be examples for some of my younger guys, unless that's the example you want to set, that's the culture you want to set?
Jenna, you are sending mixed messages because whoever you spend your money on are the players that you're empowering. If you watch Hard Knocks, you can hear Jon Gruden was trying to talk to one of the young players, a young safety, who he thought was being a little too physical in a drill that didn't have pads on. Vontaze Burfict was in the background talking to other defenders. Soon as Gruden left the frame, saying, hey, man, we got to do what we got to do out here. Not listening to the head coach. So when the head coach signs off on you being here, I used to tell guys at the Vikings, man, Denny Green got me here. Denny Green is my guy, even though I was there before Denny. Denny signed off on me. I'm one of Denny's guys, and dudes know that. They know you have to be careful in trying to cross, trying to correct guys that are targeted by the head coach, because that group of guys is always in power to control the locker room. So Jenna is right. When you trade those draft picks, when you trade away good citizens, I don't know Khalil Mack as well as I know Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper can date my 26-year-old daughter. He is that kind of kid from the hard streets of Miami, a perfect gentleman. Man, he is about being regimented, doing things the right way. Khalil Mack, I have heard nothing but great things back to his days at Buffalo. In that Raiders locker room, they said nothing but great things. So when you do, I bring in Richie Incognito. I know what you're selling. I know what you're selling, Vontaze Burfict. I'm getting ready to put him in the same locker room with Antonio? Yes, Jenna is right in this. You might be trying to say you're changing the culture, but it's a culture that's not sustainable. When the Raiders had this type of culture, they had Pro Bowl players up and down the lineup. They had journeyman, veteran players that would take less money to go play for the Renegade Raiders.
And it was to the point you made yesterday, Bart Scott, in a different era of the NFL where you could get away with a lot more stuff on and off the field and not have it result in you missing games.
Penalties lose you games.
Right, and that is a part of it that the Raiders, while I think last year they were able to get away from a bit, that we know what their historical trend for them over the last 25 years has been. One quick point before we move on. You mentioned Randy, who is one of my favorite players ever. Randy's career he was setting records on a Hall of Fame trajectory, fell out with his original team, went to the Oakland Raiders for 2 unproductive years, and it looked like it was going to go one way for him, and then a great organization and a great team got him at basement value, and he had a renaissance second phase or third phase of his career. Antonio Brown's deal is essentially a 2-year deal. It's 2 years of guarantees in Oakland. I don't know if he will have the third act, but if I had to bet money, I would bet Antonio Brown's Raiders phase is around the same length of time with around the same amount of success as Randy Moss's Raider phase.
Well, if Tom Brady wants a receiver and he wants to play till he's
45,
45, just wait
go.
2 years, have the exact same career as Randy Moss. We'll see you at 45, Tom Brady. All right, take a break. Coming up. Will Andrew Luck be on the bench week 1? That's next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Nick Wright, and hiring is challenging, but there's one place you can go where hiring is simple, fast, and smart. A place where growing businesses connect to qualified candidates. That place is, of course, ZipRecruiter.com/approach. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards, but they don't stop there. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. As applications come in, ZipRecruiter analyzes each one and spotlights the top candidates so you never miss a great match. And right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/approach. That's ZipRecruiter.com/APPROACH. ZipRecruiter.com/approach. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
We'll get to Andrew Luck in just a second, but first, Greece taking on Iran in a FIBA World Cup tune-up. This is Giannis going coast to coast right there.
Man, with the lineup we're going to be running out there, the American squad, I wouldn't be shocked if Giannis just carries Greece to a shocking title here. Like, I mean, we got a Plumlee brother on our team. They got the league MVP on theirs. Giannis out there getting that work. What up?
Oh, I thought the team was going to be nothing but brothers. You said Plumlee brother. That threw me off.
No, Joe
Next
Harris
up.
On the team.
Dejan Giroux of the University of Houston throwing down a big alley-oop while on tour in Italy.
Oh, okay.
Good young player.
A lot of people there.
Nice catch there.
Come on, Jenna.
It's hard in the summer, Jenna. Especially a college team. You get great experience traveling abroad. That was one of the
Syracuse
great
in
things
Italy,
my
too.
brother liked doing to Indiana.
Oh,
Now
my
that I
God.
like. Isiah Rivera tapping the ball off the foot. Oh, and throwing it down.
This is the kid we saw yesterday, or
Yep.
the man we saw yesterday. I don't know his age.
I'm telling you, the NBA is missing it. All right? We have all these outstanding dunkers at one time. Let's have an open competition, NBA All-Star game. Let's get it going, man. You might force LeBron to stop dunking with his kids and get out there and dunk against the real grown-ups.
All right, to the Colts now. You know the script. Ooh. Andrew Luck has a nagging injury that we don't know much about that has kept him sidelined for months now. Or in other words, it is deja vu all over again. Well, here's the latest. The Colts GM said yesterday, in the course of dealing with Luck's calf injury, it appears that now we've got an ankle issue. Luck's Week 1 status against the Chargers is now uncertain. Keep in mind, this happened back in April. That is almost 5 months ago. He has played practiced maybe 3 times since then. See, now what is your level of concern with Andrew Luck?
Red alert, really high. When we mentioned this a couple weeks ago, as far as the calf, when we start training camp, was I concerned as far as, because right now in sports, you have to realize what we're going through. What happened to Kevin Durant sent shockwaves not only through the NBA, but through sports. Anyone who works out, anyone who has a calf strain, you are going to at least think about what happened to KD. Because the Colts, you could tell, they talked about it. They talked about the Kevin Durant situation, not around it. They talked about
the head coach did, Jim Irsay did.
They all sat down and talked about it because you can believe that what happens to athlete, it's a ripple effect. So right now, with Andrew Luck, this is something that I've never seen. I've seen guys try to rehab injuries, and because of compensation, typically either they strain a hamstring, strain their other calf because their body is not balanced. But Andrew Luck, I do know this. He is a workaholic. And if he is not on the practice field, not practicing, and for the duration, you pointed out, April, originally diagnosed in April. They've had a number of scans, several scans on the calf. This is a problem. All the time that they've missed, young receivers trying to get rapport. How do they build on Eric Ebron, the Pro Bowl season he had last year, the second-round pick out of Ohio State, Paris Campbell? It slows down his overall development. Yes, this is a huge concern. If you're talking about a team that could come from the normal teams we talk about and win the Super Bowl,
it's them.
It could be the Colts.
Man, they were 1-5, and they won 11 games in a row, including the dominating playoff win over Houston until they ran into Kansas City. They were extraordinary last season down the stretch. They had to be, or they won 10 of 11, I think it was, down the stretch, including the playoff win, I should say. And now here's where we're at with Luck. Jenna, you touched on it. Since April, missed all of OTAs, missed minicamp, has practiced 3 times in a limited capacity. It was a calf strain. The owner, Jim Irsay, in an interview yesterday said he's dealing with a small bone issue, which, according to doctors in Indianapolis, there's some speculation it's calcification due to the calf strain. Not so it seems like a bone, but it's not like a bone like you'd have in your foot or your arm. Exactly. Yeah. And now we're talking about his ankle. This is really dangerous territory for Andrew Luck. In 2015, he missed half the year. In 2016, he played almost the whole year, but he was compromised clearly. In 2017, he did not play at all. And so you cannot discuss him at this point, this deep into his career, without discussing a major health concern, and which you never saw. You didn't see it at Stanford. His first 3 years, he was 16, 16, 16, played all those games. But it is not, I'd almost feel better if this were a recurring shoulder injury. But this is totally different part of the body, a totally different issue he's dealing with. I do want to ask you one quick question, see. He had said, I'm not going to play if I'm not 100%. It's not fair to my team. It's what the team needs. Okay, that's fine for the preseason. Once the regular season starts, should that be his standard, that he is not going to go out there if he's not 100% with a calf injury?
Well, you have to realize we can't hold him accountable what he said in training camp in the offseason. The stakes aren't the same.
Right.
All right? So why be out there when I know that I'm only limited? And he had a window to try to heal. In that window, he didn't heal. So I believe that even if, just like the guys that are on PUP right now, you know when the doctor's telling them they can come back? It's amazing how all these injuries,
around Labor Day.
We got 100 different injuries. All of them are going to heal up after Labor Day weekend.
Sure.
So I understand that. Andrew Luck is a professional. He will push himself. I totally disagree with you. I would much rather it be the shoulder. Absolutely not. Because you can't play football with a bad shoulder. You can get in the shotgun, hand the ball off, quick sets, get the ball out of your hand, and still be effective as a quarterback. Now, the one positive thing about the Colts, they got the best backup in Jacoby Brissett in the NFL. Him and Teddy Bridgewater, you can have your argument which one you think. I believe both of them will be starters in the near future. But if there is something that you can look from a positive standpoint, they do have Jacoby there, who also filled in for Luck 2 years ago when he was hurt, and is very, very familiar with their personnel and their offense.
So that's what I was going to bring up. At what point, after you've seen what has happened the last couple of years, do you say, all right, maybe we should give Jacoby Brissett a little more attention, get him out there with the ones a little bit more? Maybe this is the direction.
Well, he's getting all the time.
Now he is, but looking at him maybe more as the future and not just the backup.
No. You don't ever give up on your kid. You don't ever give up on Andrew Luck. Like, you know what I mean? You can't.
There we go. That's a new Nick, right?
I mean, but at some point,
Jenna.
You can't.
We just got Nick apologizing to Andrew Luck for the beginning of his career.
Because, for the beginning and middle portion when he was hurt. Jenna, your kid.
He's an uber superstar.
Yeah, we're all parents. Like, your kid can go to rehab as many times as he needs to. You're gonna keep, man.
Even if we talk so much about windows, and this is a good window for them, if you don't know who you're gonna get out there,
the window doesn't exist without him.
Yeah, but let me answer this.
They have to have.
Let me answer this. Because their situation is better, they will err on the side of caution. Luck has signed up for a long time. They are not desperate, like you say. He says the Cowboys are desperate this year to put. No, they're not desperate. They got a young team. They got salary cap, and they're more apt to be patient and go with Jacoby to be able to start it off, knowing that they might be able to keep Andrew healthier for a portion of the season. So that portion, I totally agree with you, yes.
And on the Jacoby Brissett situation, it would, to me, we have all this cap space. They didn't use a lot of it this year. They're going to have it next year. Jacoby's a pending free agent. I might prioritize bringing him back, even if Luck gets back early in the season, if he plays all 16 games. Just to clarify the point I was making about the shoulder quickly, I agree with you that for a quarterback, shoulder injury is the worst thing. The point I was trying to make, and it was maybe made the wrong way because he is a quarterback, is it's now a totally different type of injury that's hampering him. It's not a player who has one recurring injury throughout their career. We've now dealt with it.
But it's not career ending.
It's not career ending, but
Andrew Luck with his shoulder thought his career was definitely altered. And even he had anxiety thinking he could never play the same way he had played before.
All right, let's take a break. Although there's still the same amount of mystery around this injury, seemingly, as there was with the shoulder.
And Mangini would talk about their training staff. Like, what? It's multiple years now.
All right, we'll talk much more about this later on in the show. But coming up, why do the Giants want to keep rookie Daniel Jones off the field in year one? That's next on First Things First. Time to go viral. Gase is in his first season as Jets head coach, along with Le'Veon Bell. Training camp is reaching the dog days, so sometimes you need a little extra motivation. Check out defensive lineman Bronson Kaufusi getting his teammates excited.
USC. We saw the kid from USC with his dad. I think it was the kid from USC last year who his dad, I think that's the haka, did that dance, which is a cultural thing.
Yes.
Before one of the games. It was LSU last year, my apologies, not USC. Last year. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Except, did you see the offense that they were?
They got to fight against him.
They didn't take it as well as
what
or
happened
understand
was
it or appreciate it.
The defense was basically demonstrating what he had taught them. So the offense was not aware of it. They were just standing there at attention. That's what that was.
They weren't trying to get them all involved.
No. It was a defensive thing.
They were uninvolved.
Absolutely.
They're going against each other, man.
No,
it's battling for
but
jobs.
You want to get everybody up and going. I'm very inclusive when it comes to hype and everything.
That's what Jenna's known for. Her inclusivity when it comes to hype.
Meet Jenna in the gym and you'll see how inclusive.
No, then I'm on my own. Time for stories to start your morning. Not without that much muscle. After missing more than a week of practice with his frostbitten feet and because he didn't like his helmet, Antonio Brown officially returned to Raiders training camp yesterday. Hasn't actually taken the field yet, but Jon Gruden does expect AB to be ready for week one. Chris Carter, will Antonio's on-field production make up for the off-field drama?
Well, wide receivers have done this for years, and coaches, general managers, they accept it. So, yes, he is a phenomenal football player. He has unusual quickness off the line of scrimmage. His catch and run in the NFL is second to none. You can get him the ball in short space. He can beat a double team. He is phenomenal. I mean, he is phenomenal. He's gotten so much better, got his body stronger, gotten faster since he's been in the league. He's a great football player.
He's a great football player, and we do associate this position with the more diva-ish behavior. But the teams that accept the most diva behavior are the teams that their winning is coinciding with it. Chad Ochocinco, Chad Johnson, it was all good when the Bengals were on the come-up. On the downside, all of a sudden we don't have time for it. With T.O. and with Randy, and Randy wasn't as much of a diva as T.O., but when you're going to the Super Bowl, you deal with it. When all of a sudden it's not there, you move on. That's my concern for AB and the Raiders.
All right, we are moving on. Texans defensive end Jadeveon Clowney is still holding out with recent reports that the All-Pro could be on the trading block. All right, Nick, where would you like to see Clowney end up?
I think there's a few interesting options. If the Texans reportedly want to trade him for an offensive lineman, the team that I find the most interesting is the one you just saw him sacking the quarterback on. What about Philadelphia? What about Philadelphia adding to that defensive line rotation? They have 4 competent NFL tackles, a great right tackle, a Hall of Fame left tackle, first-round pick, and Vaitai, who we saw fill in more than competently a couple years ago. So I think Philly would be an excellent combination. I don't know what the Texans are doing, by the way, when it comes to one of the best players on the team.
Philly can't absorb his the cap hit that he'll have. He's going to make too much money. They just paid Carson Wentz. They played Brandon Graham 2 years ago. That set the structure that they had to get rid of our guy. Yeah, that's why they had to send him off to New England. So, no, he needs to stay right there with the Texans. I believe he's an overrated football player. I believe the price tag is too high for him. I would stay there with J.J. Watt and the rest of that wrecking crew that they have there with the Texans.
All right, moving on. With contract negotiations still looming for Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, and Ezekiel Elliott, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones is not worried. He's preaching patience. See, should the Cowboys have a sense of urgency in locking up the big 3?
No, absolutely not. Because if they rush to it, they're going to make a mistake. It's already going to be tough enough to be able to pull it off over the next year and a half. The only way this is going to work is if they get Zeke to say, hey, man, my contract demands, we'll do that next year. Amari, take the franchise tag, and let's try to work out a reasonable deal for Dak. But nothing is leaning in their favor except that Amari said, I'm not in a rush. Dak wants over $30 million, and Zeke wants to reset the market as a running back. They got problems on the way, and this won't be worked out anytime soon.
And of the 3 players, the only one that's proven as top of the league at his position or even close to it is Zeke. He's also the one with the most off-field issues. In fact, he's the only one with any off-field issues and the most years left on his contract. So it doesn't coincide with their priorities, his priorities. I think they would be best served if Dak continues to keep his demands at such a high level to walk away from the table with Dak Prescott and say, price too high, we'll revisit this later. I don't know if that's going to work with Zeke.
All right, let's move on to the Packers now. All 158 of Aaron Rodgers' starts have come under one head coach. So when Green Bay brought in a new, young, up-and-coming rookie coach in Matt LaFleur this offseason, rumblings immediately began to the tune of, could these two coexist? But if you ask Aaron Rodgers, the relationship is the least of his worries.
You have to set aside your ego and sensitivity and communicate honestly about your feelings, and then know who the boss is. I think he said it best the other night and made a kind of a crack about it. We have a great line of communication, but I'm not sitting up here wishing people, I wish you just knew this. I don't care. Look, I don't need to go out and prove to anybody how great Matt and I are getting along, or him stand up there and say how great it's been. Like, look, we're having a great time, we're communicating, and the conjecture is for clickbait news stories you guys can put on your websites.
Why are you laughing, Cece?
He's a funny guy. He's a funny guy. I do like a portion of the soundbite there, and as far as he doesn't have to prove that him and the coach get along. Nobody care. Nobody care about Brady and Belichick. It's just a matter. We know who the boss is, and we know they get the job done. Now, people try to have these questions. Oh, who's more deserving of the credit? Who's more responsible? At the end of the day, it don't matter. You got one boss. He's the head coach. As long as Aaron Rodgers knows that, whatever their relationship is, it doesn't matter. It's about the results. Are they going to be a physical football team there? Are they going to run the ball and utilize their running back? Is their defense, based on all the money they spent, going to live up to, they changed the structure of this team? Did it pay off in the first offseason? Those are the things that are really important for the Green Bay Packers, because the Green Bay Packers need to try to get themselves back into the playoff and give that guy a chance to win another Super Bowl. That's the winning formula. That's what's important. How many games they're going to win? Can they get to the playoffs? It's not a matter of Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers, how well they're getting along. Football is 3 phases: special teams, defense, and offense. We only talk about one phase in Green Bay, and that's the phase with Aaron Rodgers and the coach. Aaron Rodgers is a great player. He can play in any system in the NFL. He can adapt to any system probably better than any other quarterback, him and Patty Mahomes. Both of them have mobility. Both of them have a rocket arm. If you want to run the ball 40 times, they're great in play action. So I don't have a problem. Think Aaron's going to have a problem with the coach. The results are what we should be concerned about in Green Bay.
But, Nick, how much of those results will be based on their relationship? How much of everything CC just laid out is based on those two getting along, the coach and the quarterback?
This year, I think minimally. And I think this year that I would be flabbergasted if this year publicly Rodgers and LaFleur don't get along great, because it is in both of their best interests. Their incentives are perfectly aligned here. I do not know if last year McCarthy and Rodgers' incentives were perfectly aligned, because I think one of Rodgers' incentives might have been, I'd like a new head coach. And so, but Rodgers knows that the best case scenario for him is that Matt LaFleur is his head coach the rest of the way, because the only way he's not is if they have another disastrous season or two and they have to move on. And now we're entering the late 30s of Aaron Rodgers' career. Matt LaFleur knows that there were some people around the league that were like, really, this is going to be the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. And if he flames out with that guy at quarterback, his next job's not going to be NFL head coach. He might get that eventually again, but he's going to have to go back to the coordinating rung. So it is in both of these guys' best interest to set whatever ego they have aside to a degree and make it work, figure it out. And I trust Rodgers' talent as much as any quarterback in the league. And I don't know that much about Matt LaFleur's football mind, except for talking to Cris, who sat down with Matt LaFleur last year when the Titans' offense looked pretty pedestrian, if I'm being honest. And Cris said before we had any idea he was going to be the head coach of the Packers, man, that coordinator kind of coordinating with a hand tied behind his back.
Yes.
If he had real talent at quarterback, if he had a better roster, I think he'd be a really interesting NFL play caller. That was 3 months before we knew he was going to have the most talented quarterback as the franchise quarterback of his team. So I don't think this will be a major story this year. And I understand Rodgers' frustration because there hasn't been a real reason for us to talk about it except for the fact of what Rodgers' other relationships have been like.
But in continuing to do this, we are missing a good story. This is the best Green Bay team they've had the last 5 years. We keep talking about the coach and the quarterback as if they already have a problem, and we're missing the fact that this might be our Super Bowl champ. Because if they give Aaron Rodgers any type of help, have we forgotten who Aaron Rodgers is? Like, let's not. This is a good football team. People in Minnesota are terrified of Green Bay and terrified of the Bears, and rightfully so, because both of them are very talented.
And one of the big complaints with the Packers prior to this past year was not about the coach as much as it was about the structure, management. They don't spend money in free agency. They're not active there. They don't bring in talent. This offseason, they went out and brought in some talent. Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith. They went out there and got 2 pass rushers in that regard. You've talked about them upgrading their running game. Rodgers, when healthy, makes the playoffs. That's been the case every year of his career. If he's healthy this year, I totally agree with Cris Carter. It would not shock me at all if this team represents the NFC in the Super Bowl.
People didn't know my last name either.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, CC, Cris Carter.
I'm sure nobody wants the season to start faster than Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers to get off this topic. So we will do just that. Moving on to the Giants now, a couple of things we do know. Eli Manning is 38 years old. He's on the back end of his career, and clearly, according to Giants brass, still good enough to start and thrive. But when the Giants spent their 6th overall draft pick this year on Duke quarterback Daniel Jones, many expected a QB battle to begin immediately. But not Giants owner John Mara. He still thinks Eli, who won them 2 Super Bowls, can win them more.
I hope Eli has a great year and Daniel never sees the field. I mean, that would be in an ideal world that you'd like to see that. So, but again, it's at the end of the day, it's going to be a decision by the head coach as to when, or if Daniel ends up playing this year.
Is that's really? I mean, obviously you want the team to win a lot of games and make the playoffs, but if Daniel doesn't play one snap as a rookie, you'd be okay with that?
I'd be very happy about that because it means that we're having a great year and Eli's having a great year.
What was your reaction to that, Nick?
Well, I understand what he's saying, believe it or not. Yeah, the idea is that, hey, if we start off 10-3 and we're the story of the league, the surprise story, that means Eli's playing great. It means Daniel Jones isn't a part of it. And that's what their goal is. To me, but that's not going to happen. Like, just go ahead and set that aside. Like, that's not a realistic scenario. What is more interesting is, what if the Giants are better than I expect them to be and just middling? Right around 500 all year long.
Yeah.
And you're, with 3 weeks left in the season.
They have a good December.
Yeah, exactly right. With 3 weeks left in the season, you're 7-6. And it's like, wait, if we reel off these next 3, we can sneak into the playoffs. Remember when we snuck into the playoffs in 2007 or 2011? In that scenario, that I actually believe is the worst case scenario for the Giants. Because that will keep Daniel Jones on the sideline, prevent him from getting real game experience. It will give them false hope about Eli moving forward. It will slow this whole process down. So, of course, you'd prefer with a month left to be 11-2. You know what might be better? You know what might be the second best option, pardon me? Is to be 2-11. And have Daniel Jones already with 2 months of starting with a few games left to go in the season. And John Mara, understandably, he's the owner and chairman. He doesn't even want to think about that possibility, but that is a real possibility. It might be the more likely of the possibilities, and that's the one Giants fans and management has to prepare for.
Yeah, the Giants, and I love the Mara family. Man, they've done a tremendous job, but they've been put under the gun in these little sound bites the last number of years. Yeah. And a lot of them have proved to be wrong, what they were saying. But they started off with the initial. I asked this question. What team in the NFL could have had a losing record 5 out of the last 6 seasons and would be comfortable with their starting quarterback, who was part of all that? No other team, to me, besides the New York Football Giants. This team has had a losing season, 5 out of the last 6. So him sitting there saying Eli is getting ready to have a great year, which matches the comments of the general manager Gettleman. Oh, Eli surprisingly had a great year last year. I'm still waiting on that footage to be revealed to the world. So the Giants are in a bad situation. Anytime you draft a quarterback in the top 10, and we know the situation for Eli, those 2 Super Bowls, man, are over every decision that they've made with Eli the last couple years. They fired the coach when he benched him.
Right. And the owner just said that it's the coach's decision. But is it really? Because the last coach that made that decision
was no longer there.
I mean, the decision was then revoked a week later.
And nor is the general manager.
And he was fired.
They were both let go.
Absolutely.
But this is an organization that is unlike any other in the league in their, lack of a better term, obsession with their quarterback. These glory days of the 2 Super Bowls has seemingly gotten him, carte blanche to play out the end of his career however he seems to want to. And Eli's a great guy. Everyone loves Eli Manning, so it's hard to fight against him, even though you go ahead and they spend that 6th overall draft pick on a quarterback, even though they're fans and seemingly everyone else seems to want to push Eli out.
Yes, for the ownership there, for the management there, it would be. For them, Eli to have a very good year and decide this would be his last year. Daniel Jones is not ready to play NFL football. Now, the Giants have put themselves in this predicament by drafting him. They've also put this confidence in Eli. Eli has not played spectacular the last several years. He's been one of the most inconsistent quarterbacks that we've seen in the NFL the last 20 years. So to think that this year, with the lack of weapons, with an offensive line that I believe will be in the bottom half as far as most productive offensive line, yeah, they got one superstar, and it's Barkley, and they're getting ready to ride that mule until he passes out.
And they're trying to have it both ways. Listen, the New York Giants, to mix metaphors here, are in the afternoon signing up for Tinder and Bumble, and in the evening going to marriage counseling. Pick a lane. You can't be flirty, seeing what's next, while also saying we're.
I don't even know.
Okay, I'll explain.
You have an idea.
You're looking to see what's out there. You're testing the waters while also saying we're going to make this work. No, you can't do both. You can't pare away your talent, draft a quarterback number 6, and say we know what phase we're in, and then also say our year 16 quarterback is a guy we think can start for the next year or 2, still has great football in front of him. Pick a lane. They're trying to ride on the median. That results in car crashes. And that's, unfortunately, what I think they're going to face a lot of this year.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, will Antonio Brown's talent outweigh Antonio Brown's drama? That's ahead on First Things First. Back here, First Things First, we are joined by former former Super Bowl champ, Cris Kenny. What's up, Chris?
What's going on, Jenna?
Welcome
now,
back,
CC,
man.
was that footwork display for me, or are you trying to convince yourself you still got it?
Oh, no, I still got
still got
nice.
it.
My hands are still nice, and my footwork, especially the top of the route. I'm doing this coaching video, man, for wide receivers, training wide receivers next month. So
Okay.
I've been getting myself in shape and running some intervals.
Speaking of videos, for very low cost, just $100, you can get Chris Carter to say anything to you on the Cameo app.
Almost anything.
Go to Cameo.
No,
get him
anything.
to tell you whatever you
Anything?
want.
Anything.
You got no shame.
Absolutely.
Anything,
Do that.
absolutely.
Chris
No,
Carter
let's
out
kid it,
there.
crack-a-lacka.
There you go. Good to have you back from vacation, man.
My man.
Nice little
Well,
pictures.
Well, you got some
posted,
sun,
bro.
dog.
Oh, yeah. You know that,
Chocolate.
man.
Oh,
On the
chocolate.
Amalfi
Mocha.
Coast, you already know.
Becca. Cowboys All-Pro defensive end Robert Quinn appealed his 2-game suspension for violating the NFL's PED policy. Well, the appeal was denied. Add that to coming off of surgery to repair a broken left hand, and you'd think Dallas's newest weapon would be hard-pressed to find a silver lining. But according to Quinn, this is just part of the journey.
This is just life. It's like, this is nothing. You know, I've been through a lot worse than, you know, a messed up hand and a couple games. So this is just life. You deal with them. You know, you deal with adversity, and either, you know, it makes you weaker or stronger. So that's just on the person how he deals with it.
All right, Cris Kenny, how concerning are the issues on that defensive line for the Cowboys?
Well, I'm concerned from the standpoint that you need a good defensive line to play really good defense. The Cowboys, as a team, they're led by their defense. This has been a defense that's been top 5 in either points or yards for the past 3 years. So you're talking about the entirety of the Dak Prescott era. So if you don't have a good defensive line, it's going to be hard for this team to be able to play complementary football.
Because it's not just Robert Quinn.
It's not just Robert Quinn. Tyrone Crawford is dealing with the situation. He got into a barroom incident in Florida in March, and so he's in a diversion
Off-season.
program right now.
Yep.
So we don't know what's going to happen.
Lawrence.
DeMarcus Lawrence is dealing with the shoulder injury that he had to get cleaned up this offseason. Also, Randy Gregory, we don't know when we could expect him back because he's been suspended indefinitely. CC, I know you made this point several times on the show, but this is, I don't know how many consecutive seasons the Dallas Cowboys have started with a defensive lineman under suspension. You can throw
Linebacker or defender.
Linebacker or defender. David Irvin was in there at some point, too. So, I mean,
Yes.
there's been a lot of defensive linemen being suspended at the start of the season, and I don't know how sustainable this is going to be for the Dallas Cowboys to be able to play top-notch defense when you don't have those guys up front to get after it. Rod Marinelli's scheme, he doesn't like to do a ton of blitzing. He likes to let the front 4 rush and the back 7 guys cover. I don't know how you're going to get after the quarterback if you don't have those guys available. It's not a whole lot of proven depth behind the starting front 4 for that Dallas Cowboys defensive line. So it is a little bit of an issue.
This offseason, we've talked about the Cowboys more than any other team. And part of that's because of the Cowboys and America's team. I get that part of it. The other part of it is because they are dealing with more adversity, issues, conflict than damn near any other team in football. Not a lot of teams whose best player is currently holding out for a new deal. Clowney's not there, I get that. You've got Melvin Gordon, but he's not the best player on that team. Trent Williams, who might be the best player in Washington, he's old. But then there's Zeke with Dallas. They also have to deal with their quarterback's contract and their wide receivers' contract. And all of that is almost a secondary issue to the devastation they're facing on their defensive line right now. Those 4 names you mentioned might be their 4 best defensive linemen. DeMarcus Lawrence definitely is. He waited to have the shoulder surgery, understandably. I get why he did it, because he was going to wait till he got his contract, but now he's on the PUP list. Tyrone Crawford, a pending free agent next year, by the way, he's on the PUP list. You mentioned Robert Quinn's suspension, and Randy Gregory, who you don't know if he's ever coming back. We don't know what that is. He's dealing with suspension. Why is that so bad in addition to the lack of pass rush? The Cowboys' strength on their defense is probably not their D-line. It's probably their core of linebackers. Sean Lee, the veteran, Jalen Smith, a potential top 10 pick who dealt with a devastating injury, and Leighton Vander Esch, a first-round pick. Those guys can't run free if you've got replacement-level D tackles and D linemen in front of them trying to occupy blockers who can't. And while Byron Jones had a great year last year, the biggest weakness of that Cowboys defense the last few years has been the secondary. So now all of a sudden, the D-line makes the linebacking core worse. The secondary is the part of your defense you have the biggest question marks on. And oh yeah, by the way, all the controversy this offseason has to do with guys on the offensive end. The Cowboys, Chris, fully healthy, everyone in camp, fully locked in, to me, would be real competitors with the Eagles to win the division. The Cowboys, as presently constituted, you struggle to find how they would get above 500.
There's a number of things going around. You watch NFL training camps. I watch all the shows because I try to find out, because the league is forever changing, even though it's the same. It goes through trends. Right now, what we're going to see, New England, what they did last year, running the football, being physical, around training camps, you're going to see more two tight end offenses. You're going to see more fullback offenses and teams trying to balance their set. I believe that the most missed thing this offseason has been, especially in training camp, has been the lack of attention on Dallas and their lack of what they're going to present from a defensive front. Rod Marinelli does an unbelievable job. I thought you did a good job as far as pointing out how good this defense is, because we don't talk about them enough. We talk about the offensive players. We talked about the contracts. We talked about Zeke. We talked about Jerry. We talked about Steven. But, man, there ain't no Super Bowl aspiration if this defensive line, if they don't get this line room squared away. And Jerry has taken a chance over the last 5-6 years as far as taking chances, questionable signings. Ronaldo McClain, signing him, he gets suspended. Randy Gregory, you can't rehab the whole world, man.
And Gregory had one of the guys.
And I like Randy Gregory, and I've been working with him. But you can't save them all. And Jerry always thinks that he can give a guy an opportunity to get his life turned around. And by making that chance, he has jeopardized the season because they have not been dependable. And now he signs a guy who he didn't think. He thought a grown-up was coming there in Robert Quinn and was going to play opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence. But at right defensive end, Chris Canty will tell you, left hand broken. That's his post hand. So how good is he going to be for the first 2 months of the season? When you can't post this on an offensive lineman, your rushing ability is affected. He's probably going to have a nub on it, and he's a speed guy. He's not a power guy. He's a speed guy. So for me, that injury sets him back for at least the first 2 months of the season, and they have no type of depth up and down that line, can't they?
No, they don't have any depth, and it's dangerous when you start talking about a team that has championship aspirations, CC, because you're going to have to line up and stop people. When you think about that Thursday night game they played after Thanksgiving against New Orleans, it wasn't the offense that won that game.
No.
It was the defense.
Yes.
Playing lights out of their minds. I mean, when you think about the landscape of the NFC, you're going to have to deal with Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. You're going to have to deal with New Orleans. You're going to have to deal with Philadelphia, the Seahawks, the Rams. All of those teams are good offenses. You're going to have to slow them down.
Okay, so if you have no depth, and if some of these guys are out from either injury or suspensions, what are your options if you're the Cowboys and you're trying to shore up that D-line?
We got to play a track meet. We got to score a lot of points. Dak's got to throw the ball, because people don't realize the defensive line, it affects your quarterback. Because now I can't be patient. I can't ground it out. The reason why Dallas can be a Super Bowl contender, because their team matches up. Their best player, offense, defense, Ezekiel Elliott. He eats up the clock. In 8 games last year where they were on the field less than 30 minutes, that defensive line got beastly. They allowed them linebackers to run up and down the line of scrimmage and be able to make plays. That secondary was able to be protected, but it's in unison. Zeke running behind that powerful offensive line, protecting my young quarterback. That defensive line, they rush the passer. They keep people off my linebackers that are special group, protects my secondary that is probably the least effective of all the units they have on the Cowboys.
Goes. Andrew Luck has a nagging injury that we don't know much about that's kept him sidelined for months now. Well, here's the latest. The Colts general manager said yesterday, in the course of dealing with Luck's calf injury, it appears that now we've got an ankle issue. Luck's Week 1 status against the Chargers is now uncertain. Keep in mind, this is an injury that happened back in April. It is almost 5 months from now. Kenny, what is your level of concern with Andrew Luck and this, call it a leg injury?
Well, you have to be concerned because we're going on 5 months now and we're still talking about Andrew Luck not being comfortable and him saying that there's something wrong, he's not right. And then Jim Irsay shed a little more light on it in an interview he did yesterday where he said it's not necessarily the Kevin Durant thing. Yeah. This is more of something to do with the bone, lower legs. So you know what, the whole thing is ambiguous, and we just really don't understand where Andrew Luck is at, what kind of timetable we can have out there so we can expect him back. But
is this? Are we having this conversation right now or 2 years ago? Because that sounds like a lot of the discussion about his shoulder. And I understand his shoulder is much more detrimental for a quarterback, but a lot of the opaqueness regarding the injury, the timeline of when he would be back, lingering effects. Irsay come out and give an interview that seems to go against. Remember, Irsay a couple of years ago was like, it's mostly between the ears and not. So it feels a little deja vu-ish, even if this isn't obviously the level of concern we had 2 years ago.
No, it does. And this team has done a good job of trying to put players around Andrew Luck to protect them. They were more reliant on the running game than in years past, feeding Marlon Mack, allowing that offense to have a little bit of balance, trying to keep some hits off of Andrew Luck. He was only sacked 18 times last year. That's by far and away the least amount of times he's been sacked in a full season. So they're doing some good things from a personnel standpoint, from an X's and O's standpoint, to try to protect him. But at some point, Andrew Luck has got to be able to get back out there. I mean, you're talking about competing in the AFC South, which is quietly going to be a competitive division this year when you consider the Houston Texans and then the Jacksonville Jaguars getting their quarterback situation fixed with Nick Foles, and then, of course, the Tennessee Titans. I mean, this is not a division where you can afford to give away games. And so when you look at their schedule and how it lays out, 4 out of their first 5 opponents are AFC opponents. So if this is a team that has playoff aspirations, they need Luck to be healthy starting week 1.
And if they want to try to get home field advantage, the only thing stopped them from potentially having that last year was that bad start. Got off to 1-5.
1-5.
And then caught fire. But Andrew Luck, the reason I do have concern, not as concerned as I was with the shoulder, because the shoulder, you guys have to remember, it was part getting hit and a snowboarding incident that he had.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? He kept trying to play with that after he thought he was misdiagnosed by their training staff. Now, the training staff, is that still the same training staff that's involved in his calf? The reason why I'm concerned about the calf was I tore my calf on this show. I talk about it. That's the reason why I knew about the Kevin Durant thing. Now, in the offseason, typically you try to get everything cleaned up. He talked about getting a scan in April before you start working out with the team. So typically you can take the slow route, not the very aggressive route that doctors have you take during the regular season. So my concern is, even taking this nice and slow, it has not healed up. Now, as far as the calcium deposit on the ankle, that's the same thing that I had. Got calcification around my ankle and ultimately had to have it surgically removed, but I couldn't have it removed until the following offseason because, of course, the doctors, they tell you, you can play through it during the regular season. So based on the way they protect the quarterback, the way they run the football, they run a lot of inside zone, they can operate their offense a lot from the shotgun, which would take a lot of pressure off the calf and off the ankle. But you have to have concern when you don't have players who haven't been available for the last 3 months, but a handful of practices, that should cause football fans to be concerned.
All right, so 2 points here. One is on your point about the division. The AFC South for a long time was the worst division in football, or certainly on the short list. They are now the only division in football that in the last 2 years, all 4 teams have made the playoffs. 2 years ago, Jacksonville and Tennessee made the playoffs, and by the way, each won a playoff game. Last year, Houston and Indy replaced them in the playoffs, with Indy and Houston obviously playing each other wild card weekend. So I don't think the top level of that division, unless the Colts are fully functional, is as good as the top level of the other divisions. But we talked about this off the air, I think, a couple weeks ago for your trip, that the basement's actually pretty high there. The worst team in the AFC South could be a 7-win team, unless you think the Titans are going to totally fall off. Now, the other point is this for Luck. First year, second year, third year. Better. By third year, MVP candidate, 40 touchdowns. They got to the conference championship game. Then he's injured in year 4, misses half the year. In year 5, he plays the entirety of the season except for 1 game, but he clearly is not quite himself. And in year 6, he misses the whole year. Last year, after the first month of the year, looked like the same old Andrew Luck in a good way. Now he's dealing with this. Got to be careful now in what his career actually should be and is going to be. We talked before the show about a name, Dante Culpepper. Dante Culpepper did not have the profile Luck did coming out of college, obviously, and Dante dealt with 1 devastating injury that changed everything for him. But Dante, first 6 years of his career, was extraordinary. 93 rating, which at the time, very, very good. Almost won league MVP 1 year. Dealt with an injury, was never the same. This isn't quite apples to oranges, but a quarterback that was looking like, oh, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback for a decade plus, we have seen that story change. And for Andrew Luck to now be dealing with a lower body injury where he's not going to be 100% to start the season, if he does start the season, has to be incredibly concerning for fans.
The big difference is Andrew Luck can play the game with his head. And we've seen Drew Brees do it. We've seen Tom Brady do it. And it's different. I know Nick Saban said at that time, if you're going to bet on a quarterback, bet on one with a bad knee compared to a bad shoulder. That's what he did. As long as Andrew Luck can throw the ball, you can put him in the shotgun, and he can operate in this very less than physical NFL that we've seen. So he's playing at the right time, and he can play for a long period of time. I do believe they'll get this cleared up, but he's like a lot of other players. He's going to start the season injured and try to push himself through it.
Chris Kenny, what is your confidence in Jacoby Brissett?
Oh, I have the utmost confidence in Jacoby Brissett. You got to remember, Jacoby Brissett is a Bill Parcells guy. I mean, he gave the seal of approval, and that's why Bill Belichick went ahead and acquired him, because Jacoby Brissett showed that he had the ability to be able to process the game and play the game. Now, I don't like to throw around the term game manager, but I think Jacoby Brissett is a really good game manager. And so if he's got to step in for any period of time in an absence of Andrew Luck, I feel confident that he'll be able to get the job done. He'll be able to keep the team afloat. But this is a team that's coming into 2019 with championship aspirations. They expect to be in the playoffs. So, I mean, if you're going to be in the playoffs, then you need Andrew Luck to be your quarterback. My thing is this: go ahead and get the injury cleaned up. Let's put a timeline out there when we can expect him back, and so we can move forward once he's back on the field. The last thing that he can afford is that he comes back and then there's another setback and he's out for an extended period of time.
We'll get to Antonio Brown in a second, but first, you recognize this guy, don't you? Greece taking on Iran in a FIBA World Cup tune-up, and that is Giannis.
All right, Iran is not known for its international basketball acumen. However, Greece wasn't either until this guy, Giannis, league MVP. Man, Greece could do some damage in this tournament. You know what? Feeling basketball, see who got the best player. Greece got the best player in the tournament.
Next up, Dejan Giroux of the University of Houston throwing down a big alley-oop. This was while they were on tour in Italy.
Oh, absolutely. Love those college tours. Kids get some great experience. They're not there for the crowd noise and everything.
Clearly.
As you can see that, Jenna. But traveling abroad as a college student, what an experience.
All right, next up, Isiah Rivera tapping the ball off his foot and putting it down.
This is the kid we saw yesterday jump over the guy and do the reverse.
He tapped him off them Kobe's?
Yeah.
He got Kobe's on his feet?
Oh, I can't tell what shoes he's got on. But he is tapping it off the foot. This is wildly impressive.
I did this on a volleyball spike, and someone took a picture of it. I'm bringing it in tomorrow. You always say, let me see proof. Tomorrow, I will bring in a picture of me doing
Jenna,
the same thing.
We got two athletes on the set. We know.
Right.
Nick's so jealous. Nick's so jealous.
Did you hit the 5-year-old in the head?
No, it was a varsity game in high school. I'm bringing in a picture.
Jenna, in volleyball, you can't run and hold the ball.
You just wait.
You can grab that same pose.
Thank
You're
you
right.
very much.
You're right.
Okay?
Okay.
When the Raiders acquired Antonio Brown, no one was happier than Oakland's 6-year quarterback, Derek Carr. But with AB missing more than a week of practice with frostbitten feet and a helmet grievance, everyone wondered if the chemistry between AB and DC, it's like ABCD, will be ready for week 1. Everyone, that is, except the aforementioned Derek Carr.
He's here now, so we'll be ready to go week 1. We got a lot of time until then. Obviously a short week this week, playing a game on Thursday. But with that said, we have so much time to, get some game plan plays down, some routes, certain cuts that we're going to have him run and all those kind of things. We have plenty of time. So the fact that he's here is a good sign. It's good for us.
Cece, you talk so much about how important it is to get on the same page with your quarterback. We hear stories of Tom Brady all offseason working with guys that he's already played with, like Edelman. How long will it take for Carr and AB to do that, to get on the same page? AB hasn't even really been in there yet.
Well, this is one thing that wide receivers that they miss out on a lot of times when they change teams or they change offenses. That I know when I lost Brian Billick, that I lost some of the understanding that him and I had, some of the flexibility. Like, I knew the system as good as him and the quarterbacks, but there's little, loopholes in the system when you see certain defenses that you can ad lib, or you have years 2 years ago when we played against the Bears. They tried to double team me, and the double team guy was a little shallow to the slot. So we went behind him and threw it to the back of the end zone. We could always defer back to that. And AB, he's got a lot of ad lib in him with Ben Roethlisberger. And that was one of the things that was successful, but it was also one of the things that when they had a problem with it, that they aired it to the media. So when you change teams, you don't have that flexibility. He doesn't know the system as good as the quarterback or as good as Jon Gruden. And Jon Gruden is not a coach that likes to give the wide receivers a lot of flexibility. He likes to call it and run it exactly no matter what the defense is. So AB's going to have to be able to work out some stuff, and he's going to get double teamed. They're going to force the ball to him when he's getting double teamed. That was fine in Pittsburgh. But will it be fine in Oakland? There's a lot of things on the field they have to work out because AB is the number one weapon, and they're going to try to take him away, let alone just what NFL defenses. It's going to be, it's tough to pull out them numbers. He's a great player. But to me, a 1,200-yard season would be a great season and have that quarterback develop. I don't want the quarterback making bad reads, throwing the ball to a star receiver, and that's what happens typically when you have a wide receiver switch teams.
All right, so we hear about college to pro. One of the big differences is in college, the open is this far open, and in the pros, it's this far open. You can use a similar analogy, I feel like, with a great quarterback, this far open is open. With a mediocre quarterback, he needs a bigger window in the other direction. AB's only played with great quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger. We've seen in the limited snaps he's played, the few games he's played when Ben's been on the shelf, his production has gone off entirely. It's not entirely his fault. They became more run-oriented. You didn't go into a season with it, so I understand that. I want to hold that against him. But this is going to be a major adjustment, more so for Antonio than for Carr. For Carr, yeah, he's going to have to realize what where he wants the ball and where he's likely to freelance. But it's always easier for the person dealing with more talent. It's always, for Carr's like, oh, okay, I have the best receiver I've ever had. That's awesome. For Antonio, it's the opposite. But this year is vitally important to Derek Carr. We're a few years removed now from the year where Derek Carr was going to be a top 3 MVP finisher. He wasn't going to win the MVP that year. Matt Ryan was. But before he broke his leg. The year after that, year 4 for Derek Carr, he was bad. Last year, he was better, but it was dinks and dunks. No quarterback in football averaged fewer air yards per pass than Derek Carr. Now, is that because of him or is that because of the talent? Is that because they got rid of Amari? They didn't have enough receivers who could get open downfield? Oh, I guess we'll find out this season. Didn't have a great offensive line last year. A lot of reasons to justify.
Or is that Jon Gruden's system?
Sure. Or is the answer D, all of the above? Lack of Amari, Carr, and Gruden, all of it. But Derek Carr's on this contract that, by the way, next year they can get out of it for nothing. Like, if they wanted to move on from Derek Carr, cost them $5 million in dead money next year, you can. I'm not saying that's their plan, but I think it is something they've contemplated. Now, the flip side is, at $25 million, if he gets back to what he was in year 3, he's a bargain in today's NFL. When Wentz making 32, Russell's making 35. And you can go into next year with a star quarterback and a star wide receiver. But this year is vitally important for Derek Carr's future with this franchise, which is why, while all the noise has been surrounding AB, the person who might be paying the heaviest price for it is actually DC, as you put it a moment ago.
Let me ask you a question about Antonio Brown. You have a talent like that. What's the timing on how long it takes for him to get used to the offense, for him to just jump right in? It doesn't look like it's going to be tomorrow before he gets out on the field and he's able to cut again with his feet. I'm just curious if this is going to bleed into the regular season of them still trying to get to know each other.
No, we have to go back to the offseason. He's been there the whole offseason. They have OTAs, they have installation, they have the mini camps. So he knows the offense. It's not a matter of that. It's just the small little things. What if a defender, if he's on my upfield shoulder, where's the quarterback going to throw the ball? If they have cover 2 as an adjustment, what's the route adjustment off of that? What's the verbiage? Because there's a lot of offenses that are the same, but they say different things. In Minnesota, if I had a deep end, they would just call me XN. If you go into another offense, they might call it Dallas, where you have the XN and the Z has the post. So some of it's memory, some of it's numbers, and some of it is a combination of both. And you need to get live bullets when you're tired, when the free radicals are in your brain, when lactic acid, and then you get to play and try to work it out. That's the thing that we take for granted, the chemistry that he had with Ben Roethlisberger. That has to be developed there in Oakland.
Right.
It does take some time. He knows the plays, but they're going to force feed him the ball. And the quick strike offense, they're going to throw him the ball at the line of scrimmage a lot. Their offense was throw the ball short. He's one of the best in the business at getting it short, so expect them to do that and to build off of that.
And the Raiders, listen, they went out this offseason to try to help Derek Carr. They trade for Antonio Brown. They signed Tyrell Williams at a pretty rich contract, 4 years, $44 million. They draft Hunter Renfrow in the 5th round, but they draft a running back in the 1st round. They give Trent Brown all that money on the right side of the offensive line. The problem with the Raiders last year, more than anything, was a horrific defense. They focused on the offense this year most notably. I know they spent the 4th overall pick on a pass rusher out of Clemson and Farrell, but Derek Carr, not a lot of, in my mind, excuses for Derek Carr this season.
One thing, that defense is going to be bad again. They're going to be in a lot of high-scoring games, so watch the numbers, because the numbers can be inflated and them still not be a good football team. Because for me, I believe AB has said this: I'm not about winning anymore. I'm about catching. I'm about my brand. So he'll be happy either 3-13. If he had 1,300 yards, he'll be happy.
AB and DC.
Well done. We got it, Jenna. The alphabet.
CD.
She's going to go all the way to Z during the break. You're going to miss it, America.
Cowboys Super Bowl run have nothing to do with Dak and the offense. That's next on First Things First. Back to your First Things First. And we're going viral. Episode 2 of HBO's Hard Knocks aired last night, and Jon Gruden had an interesting story about another head coach he met a while back. Take a listen.
He wanted to get in the NFL, so we made him a secretary, really, just to get him in the building. McVay started like I started with the 49ers. They called me the piss boy. In the Mel Brooks movie, you know, they'd call for the guy to come running over there with the bucket when the guys got off the horse. So we called McVay the piss boy, just to let him know how it felt. And then, next thing I know, he's helping coach the wide receivers, and he's coming up with ideas for game plans.
You like football?
Yes, sir. Love it.
Yeah? You gonna work at it, or you just gonna watch it? You're scratching yourself, watching TV, listening to all the commentary out there. There's a lot of that.
Yes, sir.
Listen, I don't know if the coaching thing is going to work out for Gruden, but if it doesn't, I think he might have a future in television. Tells compelling stories, energetic, seems to really love the game. I'm just saying it could be an interesting pivot for him. Keep it on the board. Chris Carter loves these Jon Gruden videos. There's nothing he loves more. Kicks his feet up like he's at home, watching the old lazy.
Because typically I do that and I go to school and I learn something. But then now I'm wondering, can I get that 30 seconds, 45 seconds back that I didn't learn one thing?
You would.
The NFL world's going to find out.
You'd put your feet up at school?
Do you want all three of us to be doing this?
When you take advanced classes, you can do that, Nick. You wouldn't know anything about that.
Really?
Remedial student you were.
What is happening?
Touche. I mean, you've checkmated me there, see? That's correct.
Time for stories to start your morning sticking with the Raiders.
Advanced classes actually have footstools in there for you.
And the return of their star wide receiver. Antonio Brown took to Twitter to find a new helmet yesterday. He has reportedly found a new one that fits his standards.
This is so funny.
See, what do you make of this?
Of this fool?
Of AB. The helmet. Let me go first.
Nick, what do you make of this?
AB threatened retirement about the helmet. He took the helmet thing so seriously that it wasn't until days later he's like, wait, hold on a second. Because someone tweeted, hey, man, why don't you just buy one of the ones that's not more than 10 years old? It's like, oh, I care so much about this helmet, I might retire. But he had an alternative that could have solved this weeks ago, months ago,
take it this far.
and didn't even know it. This makes me thinks maybe he's not as serious about this as he led people to believe. He's very serious about the attention being paid to him because of this.
Only thing dumber than this is him burning his feet, burning the skin off of his feet. Okay?
I think he's going to get one, by the way. He's going to get a helmet.
Well, here's
he
the
offered
good news.
a helmet himself.
I'm sure there will be yet another chapter before the season starts.
Oh, yeah.
So we're good
that
to
actually
go on
literally is good news considering what we do for a living.
On to Andrew Luck. Yesterday, the Colts GM said in the course of dealing with Luck's calf injury, it appears now that we've got an ankle issue. Luck's Week 1 status against the Chargers remains uncertain now. See, what is your level of concern here with Andrew Luck's injury?
I'm very concerned because you take over the last 3 or 4 months, he's had a number of scans on the calf. I do understand the injury or the situation as far as his ankle, because you start to compensate. You get a little calcium, little module on the front of the ankle. Ultimately, it's going to be painful, but then he can get operated on next year. They just shave it down. I had that surgery. But when you're not out there with your troops, this is a very good football team. If you talk about a team that amongst the top 4 teams that would come from the pack, to me, I would pick the Colts. Their roster top to bottom, if their defense can get a little bit better, they could be there in Miami.
And watch these highlights. I mean, watch. He throws 5 touchdown passes or 5 big passes. 3 of them, he's on the move. I mean, I understand he obviously can just drop back and sling it. But stuff like that, a little mobile out of the pocket, rolling to his right, making a big throw down the field. A lack of mobility, it wouldn't kill him, but it would decrease his overall effectiveness because he's so good on plays like the one we're showing right there.
All right, moving on. With contract negotiations still looming for Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, and Ezekiel Elliott, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones isn't worried and is preaching patience. Nick, should the Cowboys have a sense of urgency in locking up the big 3?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have a sense of urgency when it comes to matching what it appears Dak Prescott wants. I think they have made a more than fair offer, and if Dak wants to make it to where they have a justified reason to walk away from negotiations, pay him $2 million this year and deal with it next season, to me that would be a godsend. Now, Zeke, because he's not there, is forcing a sense of urgency. The question is, can they bridge the gap, which appears to be around $3 to $4 million per year of a gap, and we untold guaranteed dollars in a gap. But with Dak, I wouldn't have a sense of urgency. He's under contract, and I think that it would be good for them to get another season worth of information on him.
Jerry Jones is the best negotiator they have in the NFL, but I am concerned because there are no good deals out there to be had. Amari said, I'm going to be patient. So that, to me, leads to a franchise tag. Dak has already asked for more than $30 million, so ain't no good deals out there. No. And Zeke has asked to reset the running back market. So, no, Jerry better be patient, because if he signs a deal early, bad deals are signed early. So, no, Jerry, sit, hold tight.
Thought there was a third one there. Okay, to the defensive side in Dallas, All-Pro DN Robert Quinn appealed his 2-game suspension for violating the NFL's PED policy. The appeal was denied. Add that to coming off of surgery to repair a broken left hand, and you'd think Dallas's newest weapon would be hard-pressed to find a silver lining. But according to Quinn, this is just part of the journey.
It's just part of it.
This is just life. It's like, this is nothing. You know, I've been through a lot worse than, you know, a messed up hand and, you know, a couple games. So this is just life. You deal with them. You know, you deal with adversity, and either, you know, it makes you weaker or stronger. So that's just on the person, how he deals with it.
All right, see, let's talk about the issues that Dallas is now facing on defense, specifically the D-line. We've spent weeks talking about their offense. Is their defense a little bit underrated, or are we just not talking about it?
There are no Super Bowl aspirations unless Dallas has the type of defense that they put out there the last 3 years. I believe that there has been no unit that we have avoided either or missed talking about their defensive line. They can't start the season. They don't have a defensive front right now. We talk about their linebackers, how good they are. They have 3 of them. Sean Lee even signed him back. But those linebackers, if they can't be free to run to the ball, because that's one thing they have in common. Yep. All of them are very fast. But you have to have linemen who are clutching and grabbing the offensive linemen to keep them from getting up on the linebackers. That is the style. Rod Marinelli, who's the defensive coordinator there, he has done a tremendous job of teaching defense. We had the stat that when this defense plays less than 30 minutes, they were undefeated last year. So it's a combination. Zeke's not there. That's a problem because he leans on that offensive line, and them leaning on the defense allows their defense that is a little undersized to play less than 30 minutes, and that's when they're effective. So they brought Robert Quinn in to play opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence. But they also brought him in to be a leader and to stabilize that defensive line room that has been in flux for the last several years. Multiple suspensions, multiple young players not living up to their talent. So that's what they brought Quinn in, and now he's suspended. So the last 5 years, the Dallas Cowboys have had at least one starter on their defense that has been suspended for something that they could have avoided. So there's huge problems in Dallas. I believe that people need to give this more attention because this is not a Super Bowl or playoff team unless they have that front seven intact. And right now, 2 of their starters are on PUP. One of them has a broke hand and is suspended. So they can't afford to get into a high-scoring game. They can't outscore the Saints. They can't outscore the Falcons, the Rams. They can't outscore these teams. Green Bay. No, they can't do that. So this is a huge development, and I think we should be on top of it because it will affect how the NFL season's played out.
The highest paid player on their defense and the best player on their defense ostensibly is DeMarcus Lawrence. He's on PUP list. The second highest paid player on their defense and one of the best players on their defense, Tyrone Crawford, he's on the PUP list. Robert Quinn, who is their biggest front seven defensive addition, he's suspended, and Cris mentioned has a broken hand and earlier demonstrated why that broken left hand, even because you can play with a club on it, what he's going to want to do as far as a pass rushing standpoint is going to be hampered until that club comes off it. And Randy Gregory, a guy who I think has high-level talent.
Yep.
And we saw that. Listen, there's a reason he fell in the draft. I think he was coming out of Nebraska.
Yes.
Guy smoked a lot of weed in Nebraska, seems to be smoking a lot of weed in the NFL. Now, whether or not you should be suspended for that is a separate discussion. I don't think you should be, but it's the rules. And he knew it was the rules, and it might have derailed, if not ended, at least temporarily derailed his
Taco Charlton, 2017 first-round pick from Michigan. He's been a bust. I don't know what Nick considers a bust. 3 sacks his rookie year, 1 sack last year. You're going into your 3rd year, and you have all these opportunities on this defensive line. Thus far, he's been a bust from the University of Michigan.
And we know that the Cowboys right now are not bullish on him, or else they wouldn't have targeted Robert Quinn in the offseason. They paid DeMarcus Lawrence. I know you like to have a rotation of defensive linemen, but you can only spend money in so many places. Obviously, the Cowboys knew the contracts were coming up. They still went out and prioritized Robert Quinn. But the point you made about the impact this has on maybe the best unit on their team, certainly the best unit on their defense, the linebackers, is the most important one. They don't have, you talk about the Patriots, they got 2 linebackers that are 500 pounds combined.
Yes.
Jamie Collins, Dante Hightower. Those guys have a certain job. The Cowboys linebackers are smaller and faster. Their job is to get out in space and go make tackles. That means the defensive tackles and the defensive linemen's job to a degree is to just keep those offensive linemen. You don't see defensive linemen get called for holding, but it's almost what you want them to do.
Absolutely.
Hold the opposing team's offensive line in check, not necessarily try to go upfield, and let the linebackers go make plays. Well, if all of a sudden it's Antoine Woods and Taco Charlton and Dorrance Armstrong as your defensive line, along with Christian Covington, who I actually think is a pretty decent player, good backup in this league. Then Sean Lee, forget him. Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith, your 2 best linebackers, are less effective.
Yes.
Guys that you are relying on. And I know Byron Jones was excellent last year, but the biggest question mark on their defense is supposed to be their secondary, not their defensive line, where they've actually spent money, first-round picks, and resources. But that's where the question mark is now, at least for the beginning of the season.
And how much does that affect Dak Prescott and the offense?
It affects them because it makes them press. They can't be patient. You can't go out on the field and have 3 and out. You put the defense on a short field, then they run down and score on you. So they can't play the methodical, patient game that they have. Man, they have a game plan how to win games the last 3 years. Hand the ball to that guy 20 times, eat up the clock, allow your defense, because your defense has been good as far as one of the top defenses and definitely one of the top scoring defenses. And it affects, it's a trickle-down effect. It affects your quarterback, makes him rush. I know your wide receiving core is better, but you still know the best way for the Cowboys is methodical. Let's run the ball 35 times. Let's get Dak about 28 to 30 throws in there. Like, that's the winning formula for them. Rod Marinelli, their defensive coordinator, has done a great job. His standard defense, he likes to rush 3 or 4. So now if I don't have that defensive line intact, you know what I got to do to Van Der Esch and them? I got to blitz them. I got to put Jalen Smith. I got to blitz him to put pressure on the quarterback, and then I got to put that secondary in question in man-to-man coverage. So then that's favorable for the offense. So the trickle-down effect on the quarterback, trickle-down effect on the linebackers, trickle-down effect on the back end on that secondary.
And there is no version of the 2019 Cowboys season that is successful without the first few weeks being successful. The second quarter of the season, they have a stretch where they've got the Saints, the Packers, and the Eagles. They have a stretch late in the season where they have the Patriots, Bears, Rams, and Eagles again. You have Giants, Washington, Miami early.
Let's go to that. Giants, who?
Washington, Miami.
Barkley?
Right,
Barkley might rush for 1,000 the first week with that defensive line.
And so that first few weeks of your season,
Adrian Peterson,
that's when Robert Quinn is suspended.
Yes.
We don't know if DeMarcus Lawrence and Tyrone Crawford will be back. And oh yeah, by the way, Zeke's in Mexico. So that opening stretch where you should be favored, where you have to win those games, they might be without 3 of their most 7 talented players on the whole roster. It's a huge potential problem for Dallas on both sides of the ball.
Jerry Jones is like, I'm 82. I don't need this kind of drama, but he's got it. Coming up, is he 82?
76.
76. I'm so sorry I aged you up, Jerry. 70 what? Forget it. Why are the Giants hoping to keep rookie Daniel Jones off the field? That's next on First.
Turns 77 October 15th.
With Cris Canny.
Yes,
and we're talking the Giants. We want more Giants to talk about. Couple of things we know, Canny. Eli Manning is 38 years old. He's at the back end of his career, and clearly, according to Giants brass, he's still good enough to start and thrive. But when the G-men spent their 6th overall draft pick this year on Duke quarterback Daniel Jones, many expected a quarterback battle to begin immediately. But not Giants owner John Mara. He still thinks Eli, who won them 2 Super Bowls, can win them more.
I hope Eli has a great year and Daniel never sees the field. I mean, that would be in an ideal world that you'd like to see that. So, but again, it's at the end of the day, it's going to be a decision by the head coach as to when, or if Daniel ends up playing this year.
Is that's really? I mean, you would. I mean, obviously, you want a team to win a lot of games and make the playoffs, but. If Daniel doesn't play 1 snap as a rookie, you'd be okay with that?
I'd be very happy about that because it means that we're having a great year and Eli's having a great year.
All right, Canny, what was your reaction to what Mr. Mara had to say there about Eli?
I was shaking my head. I mean, to me, this is...
You like that man, too, now.
I have the utmost respect for John Mara, for his family, and how they handled the business of the New York Football Giants. But this is missing the forest through the trees.
And real quick, I think most of our audience knows this, but maybe not. Canny, did you win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I won a Super Bowl with the New York Giants.
And who was the quarterback?
46. And Eli Manning was the quarterback.
Okay, so you're a person that has real loyalty to the organization, the owner, and to the quarterback.
But that doesn't stop me from being objective about talking about him. And the reality is that Eli Manning is not the same quarterback that won those 2 Super Bowls over a decade ago. He's not. He's a different Eli Manning, and we've really had to deal with that the last 5 years, and you see that this offense has struggled. They've been inconsistent. Now, the team has done everything that they can to try to support him. I mean, they had Odell Beckham Jr. They elevated Ben McAdoo from coordinator to the head coach because they wanted to maintain the continuity of that offense. 2 years ago, they drafted Saquon Barkley with the 2nd overall pick. They gave Nate Solder a boatload of money in free agency. They drafted Will Hernandez. I mean, they've done everything that they can to try to support Eli Manning, and it just has not worked out. The last 2 years, they got a grand total of 8 wins. 8-24 just ain't going to get it done. By any metric, by any standard, it's not good enough. And so when you start evaluating the different reasons why the Giants are losing, you have to also consider the possibility that maybe the quarterback just isn't good enough to put this team in position to consistently compete.
Chris, you said something earlier that I want to revisit. The Giants have had a losing record, 5 of the last 6 years?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any team in the league that have had a losing record 5 of the last 6 years with the quarterback being healthy the entirety of the time would not be questioning if they need to make a quarterback change?
No.
The answer is no.
No.
The answer is without...
Tom Brady went to 3 straight Super Bowls, and Bill Belichick said, I'll give you a little bump this year.
Right?
Next year, no guarantee.
Not so much.
Absolutely. And so, obviously, the Giants are showing an irrational level of loyalty to Eli Manning. Now, with that said, I understand what John Mara is saying. It's a fantasy land, but it is accurate. The best case scenario is that Daniel Jones never plays.
We talked about it yesterday.
The Giants are 12-4 because they all those draft picks that seem to be maybe, except for Saquon, underperforming, the free agent signings like Solder that underperformed, they all hit this year. Just took them an extra year to bloom, and this defense, which was a train wreck last year, they have 2 first-round picks on defense. Those guys hit instantly, all these things. That is the best case scenario. But if that is also the least likely of all the possible Giant scenarios, you then have to ask yourself the following. What is the next best case scenario? Because I would argue it is not to be in the hunt. Because if this Giants team with a month left in the season is 6-6, guess what? That will mean Eli's played the whole year, and that will probably mean he's going to play the rest of the year. Because at 6-6, you know what you are? A month away from 10 wins in the playoffs. And teams don't punt on that. So what is best for the Giants long term is for the beginning of this year to go poorly, is for Daniel Jones to get as many live reps as possible, but they don't even want to entertain that possibility, except for, of course, the day of the draft, when they fully entertain that possibility by drafting this kid 6th overall. The Giants, to me, are trying to live in both lanes. We're worried about the future. That's why we're getting rid of Beckham for draft picks. That's why we're drafting the quarterback.
Right.
That's why we're trading Olivier Vernon. We're moving on from Landon Collins, not paying him, and live in the present, which is our year 16 quarterback who hasn't had a good year, a really good year in almost a decade. He's this close to turning it around.
Well, of course, the Giants don't want to make that change because once the change is made, that's it for Eli. Once you put Daniel Jones in, they love this guy. I mean, he's like their ride or die. They're going to take Eli as far as possible.
Absolutely.
And at one point, at any point in the season, they make that change, it's going to be very hard for them to go backwards, and that would be the end of the Eli Manning era.
Well, no, you can't go backwards. Once you make the change, Daniel Jones is your guy. The future starts now. But to me, this entire season has to be about the development of Daniel Jones. I said it before and I said it again. But to Nick's point, it feels like the Giants are half pregnant. It's almost like they're building for the future, but they want to win in the present with Eli Manning. The reality is this is the last year of Eli Manning being under contract. I don't want to go into 2020 without Daniel Jones taking a meaningful snap in the season. Now, Nick, you outlined the timeline saying that Week 7 matchup at home against Arizona would be a good time because you got a little over a week because you played the Thursday night before up in New England. I think that makes a little sense. But if the Giants are 500, that's not going to happen.
They're not going to do it.
They're not going to do it. They're not going to pull the plug on Eli Manning. They're going to give him every opportunity to be successful. But I think the Giants have to think about the history and the development of Eli Manning. When he was a rookie, they decided to bench Kurt Warner at 5-4 when they were very much in the thick of things for the playoff race, and they started Eli Manning the last 7 games of that season. CC, do you remember what Eli Manning's record was as a starting quarterback?
Was it 0-7?
He was 1-6, and the one game that he won was the regular season finale.
0-6.
So, I mean, listen, it's invaluable getting a rookie quarterback experience in the regular season because you're going to allow him the opportunity to work on some things in his first full offseason as a pro. I think the Giants have to support Daniel Jones in every regard, and that's a big part of it, getting an opportunity to get some game reps.
The problem with the Mara family, and Jenna and I have been doing this long enough to have covered them, good Eli, in those Super Bowls, and you were there. The only thing that's the same about the Giants is the ownership. I remember those defenses. I remember sitting down with a defensive tackle before the game against the undefeated Patriots. I asked him one question. Man, what's going to happen? He said, I don't know if we're going to win. But Tom Brady, we're going to check his oil. They said a few things to us. The last game of the regular season, they didn't think we was going to ever see each other in life. And he said, this is a matter of respect. They disrespected me, and we getting ready to take the pain to them. There are no aspects of this football team that are similar to those two teams. And guess what? The first month of the season, let's go with Benny Fowler and Cody Lattimore. That might be your starting wide receivers. Yeah. So this is not set up for Eli as much as they'd like this to be his swan song. Let him go off into the sunset. But they drafted the quarterback. They have to play the quarterback this year because that roster, that offensive line, everyone is going to feast on Barkley. He's the only bright spot on that team. Eli Manning, it's over with. Like, it's over with. As much as we love Eli, oh, shucks, oh, Eli, like we love Eli, it's over with. No team in this league would go 5 of 6 losing seasons and wouldn't be trying to move on from their quarterback or had moved on from their quarterback. Eli's been in a special situation. The last 3 years, they should have done something to build it. We shouldn't even be in this spot at this point, Canty.
No, you're right. And real quick, to your point, I mean, this is not a more talented team than the group that they marched out there in 2018 when they won a grand total of 5 wins. They didn't get better by trading OV and letting Landon Collins walk out of the door, trading Snacks Harrison, trading Odell Beckham Jr. They are not a more talented team. So I don't understand why they think the results of this season would be significantly better than what they had the last 2 years.
When you were interviewing that D tackle, Cris Canty, did you think once upon that 10 years later he'd be vacationing to the Amalfi Coast, being a big TV and radio star?
He was so big, I thought he was half pregnant.
Canty, stick around.
Ride or die.
Yeah, ride or die. That was good, Jenna.
You like
you
that?
did that. You got it.
Yesterday was my friend Marnie's birthday, and on Facebook I wrote, "Happy birthday to my ride or die," and that's when it came up. But okay.
You got it in.
Will Antonio Brown's production make up for his drama? Back here with Cris Canty, obviously. Antonio Brown officially returned to Raiders training camp yesterday. Now that he's found a new helmet via Twitter, totally normal, obviously, he can focus on getting his frostbitten feet healthy again. Head coach Jon Gruden expects AB to be ready week 1 despite all his issues. So does AB.
Well, I'm extremely grateful to be here. We're dealing with a lot of adversity. It's on up and up on things, so I'm excited to be back and see my teammates and get in the groove of things here shortly.
We know where he's been. We know what he's been through. We're thrilled to have him back, and obviously we think he's a great player, and we're anxious to get the men together and get rolling.
I'm battling with a foot injury. You know, I see my face all over the news, all the talk, but these guys have been doing a good job with supporting me. It's grateful to hear them come out about it, and I'm excited here to just do my job.
Cris Canty, this has sort of been the theme all morning. Will Antonio Brown's production on the field make up for all this drama that he's caused off the field so far?
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens with Antonio Brown. He's been one of the most consistent players in the National Football League. The last 6 years, over 100 catches. You can pencil him in for 1,300 yards or more and north of 12 touchdowns. That's who Antonio Brown is. From a production standpoint, that's a constant. I don't think that Jon Gruden or Mike Mayock are worried about that. The only question is what the baggage that he brings to the table, is it disruptive in terms of what they're trying to do, what they're trying to build with their new culture, with their new program? That's something that remains to be seen. But
do you think it's been disruptive so far?
Well, I think it makes it tough for Jon Gruden. That's the biggest part about it. I mean, Jon Gruden right now is the face of that organization. This is a team that's not sold on their starting quarterback. Correct. I think a lot of the moves that they made this offseason is to answer the question of whether or not they got a guy under center that they can rely on going to Vegas. That's why you paid Trent Brown and made him the highest paid tackle in the NFL. That's why you went out and got Tyrell Williams and traded for Antonio Brown.
And drafted a running back in the first round.
And drafted Josh Jacobs. And, of course, they signed Richie Incognito. They did all of those things to try to put the pieces in place to eliminate all the excuses that Derek Carr has had the last several seasons. So we'll find out what Derek Carr is made of. And keep in mind, with that contract, this is the last year where the dead cap number is exactly.
After this year, if they cut him, it's $5 million. That's it.
Exactly. And so they can move on from him after this season. I think this is kind of I guess this is the referendum season for Derek Carr right now. So I think that they've done the job of putting the pieces in place. But as far as Antonio Brown is concerned, he does give them a star that they can sell. He makes them interesting. But beyond that, I think the biggest thing for Jon Gruden is trying to figure out whether or not he's got a quarterback, and Antonio Brown is going to help him do that.
Well, Antonio Brown's going to be great when he plays. Now, I don't know if he's going to be Steelers Antonio Brown great, because Ben Roethlisberger's not there, and that offensive line's not there, and that Le'Veon Bell, now he was very productive last year without Le'Veon Bell, but they're not as good in many weapons. He was doubled in Pittsburgh all the time because he was the number one option there, and he was still great. So I think his production will take a bit of a haircut, but it's not going to fall off the map. But it is, for me, easier to deal with the nonsense if I am a Super Bowl caliber or playoff caliber team than a team that's got a lot of young guys that's trying to create a culture and trying to build something. Mm-hmm. So if the Rams, for example, had been like, we're trading for AB. I know they couldn't, but I've been like, okay, I get it. Like, yeah, he's going to be a headache for McVay and a headache for whatever, but they are right there. They absolutely, the juice is worth the squeeze in that regard. When AB might be the difference between 4 wins and 6 wins, but you're also trying to instill a culture as you move to Vegas. You're trying to show all these first-round picks that you have this year and next year, how to be a professional, that's where the concern comes. And that's where the previous diva-ish wide receivers we've seen, they have been absolutely worth it when the team's been great, and less so when the team hasn't been. Like Randy never did to me stuff what AB's done the last few months, but Randy obviously had some elements to him. And when he was on good teams, totally worth it. And by the way, a lot of the behavior was minimized. When he was in Oakland for those 2 years, was not even close to worth it. When his production fell off at the tail end of his career, not close to worth it. T.O., obviously, he was a headache throughout. But when he's playing the Super Bowl on a broken leg and being awesome, it's worth it. When he's not that guy anymore, he's just good, not great, or when the team's not great, not worth it. And so that's going to be the struggle for Antonio Brown. He's never been on a team that's under 500. Now, I know you've said he doesn't care about winning. He cares about catches, stats, money, and fame. And so, right? I'm not misquoting you there, I don't think.
Well, I believe at this point in his career, he's given up the pursuit of winning in pursuit of other things. He wants to be popular. Social media is important to him. Him being one of the highest paid receivers, getting paid again, that was important to him because if championship football was just it, you stay in Pittsburgh. You stay in there with the same window Ben Roethlisberger, and you try to win. But every NFL team has distractions in the locker room. But only the championship teams have character. There are teams like the Raiders who sign characters, and that's what they've done with AB. And that's who he's starting to become. He's a great football player. But he's become more of a character in this last 12 months, 24 months than anyone else that we've seen in the league. We criticize OBJ about all different types of stuff. He never done anything like this. And typically the essence of a guy, I've been knowing AB for a long time. And I remember the more humble AB, the guy that was hungry, a guy that used to remember when he was homeless. When I watched him yesterday parade up and down the field and cameras and Drew Rosenhaus at his side and everything, I was like, where'd that kid go? Where was the kid who was sleeping in a car? Didn't have nowhere to go, didn't have a whole bunch of D1 offers, didn't have no great grades, had some kids when he was very, 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 very young father trying to find himself. And he worked himself. And the reason why I gave him such grace in Pittsburgh, I knew he was the hardest worker in the building. But at some point, it becomes counterproductive. Because Jon Gruden can't send a message of character to that locker room when you sign the characters that they have signed. And I would love to sit here and talk about AB. This 6-year window can really only be compared to a handful of guys and Jerry Rice being the main guy. But I can't because my helmet, I don't like it. It don't look good on me. This ain't about being safe. He told the NFL, this don't look good on me. I don't like the way it looks on me on the new helmet. And he's right. The new helmets, they aren't as nice. They're a little bigger, all right? So I understand that. He's not telling them that, but I know what he told the NFL in private conversations. So for me, I would love to. One of the guys in the Hall of Fame, and I love all different types of receiver, Nick Wright gave him the name of maybe the greatest small guy ever in the history of this game.
He's on the very short list. He's right.
We can't talk about it, though. We can't talk about it, though, because all these other things. And the Raiders, they are only adding fuel to the fire because the Raiders know what happened. And you know that, Canty. When a guy gets injured in the locker room doing some type of therapy, we know exactly what happened. And they're still not trying to blame him when all he had to do was put on the necessary equipment and he wouldn't have burned his feet off. Okay? So you can't continue to empower that type of behavior. Championship football in the NFL, you win with character, not with characters, and it will play out during the season the way it has in our recent history.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.